What's up guys, it's Anthony, and today I wanted to do a film emulation tutorial for you guys in Davinci Resolve. Let's jump into it. Okay guys, so we're over here on the computer and you guys can see I have 3 clips set up here in Davinci Resolve. Now I'm gonna start from scratch and I'm gonna show you guys how I build my node tree and how I build a film emulation. So the first things first, if you're not familiar with Davinci Resolve, you have these tabs down here. And I'm going to click on the media tab. This is where I drop my media in. If you have it on an SSD drive or you have it on your computer, you can drop it in, no problem. I'm not going to show you guys how to do that because this is just going to be a color grading tutorial, and I'm going to show you guys from there. So if you have an edit like I do right here with these 3 clips, then you'll scrub to the timeline and you can see these different clips, different areas, different shots. So the first thing that I'm going to do that I like to do first is I like to just scale my clips. That way I don't have those crop bars. So I shot these on a Panasonic EVO 1 shooting at 4K, and that's why it has a crop, because it crops at 4K. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start from the beginning, and I'm going to come over here to my color tab. You'll see it right here at the bottom in between the fusion and the Fairlight tab. So when we jump into the color space, you'll see a bunch of different things up here. I'm going to close this gallery because I don't need to use that right now. I like to work in my scopes tab. The first thing that I always like to do is I always like to try to pull as much as I can out of the shadows and the highlights. So from there, I'm going to move this node up here and I'm going to start adding nodes. Now, if you're on a Mac, it's Option S. Or if you would like to just add a node, you could right click and click add node and add any one that you want. You could also click on the clip itself and add one as well, serial, parallel, layer, all those different things. So I'm going to make about 10 nodes. That's what I've found that works for me. To each their own. Everyone has their own style. Everyone has their own workflow. And for me, this has just worked good. 10 normally gives me about a good extra. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to pop open these primary color wheels and just take a look, see where everything's at. But the first thing that I do want to do to add onto our nodes is color space transform. Now, if this is not up, then you may have it unclicked. So you want to make sure you click effects and then you'll scroll down to color space transform, or you can search it up here in the search bar. For me, I'm just going to drag it on and I drag it to clip number 8. The reason why I do that is because I like to put it towards the end and then work back from there. So it's very important right here in the color space transform to understand your color space and your input gamma. For me, my color space is already going to be set as a timeline, but my gamma is going to be Panasonic Vlog. It changed it from Vlog to Rec 709. And from there, I'm going to change my output gamma to Cineon Film Log. This is going to bring us back to film, and this is going to help for our emulation LUT. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my second to last node and add on a LUT. For me today, I'm going to be using a Fujifilm D55. I really like the D55 and the look of that. So this is before and this is after. So as you can see, the clip is already looking very, very nice, but we still have a lot of work to do. This is just a very simple LUT addition. For us, we're going to do a film emulation and we're going to make it look beautiful. So next step is I'm going to go to the top. So now that I said that I like to work from back to front, is I like to edit the clip with the end in mind. So I like to set the color space transform on 8 and I like to set my LUT on 9. I'll get to what number 10 is in a little bit, but for now we're going to go up to the top. I like to space it all out. So the top, I have some work that I need to do in the shadows, and also I need to bring some mid-range out of the mid-range right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag my lift down just a little bit to pull the shadows and pull the image down just a little bit. I'm trying to really focus on this dark area here to make sure that the dynamic range fits very well. From there, I'm going to boost up my gamma just a tad, and then I'm going to go into the gain. I'm going to pull the gain up, and then I like how that sits. It's sitting a little high. However, I'm going to drag the lift back down, and I'm going to pull as much as I can down in those shadows. So this is before. And this is after. So if you see, it's just brightening up the image. If we pull it up close, before and after. So it's giving us very dynamic image that we're looking for here in this image. The second thing that I want to work towards is I want to work towards my saturation. Now there's a couple different ways that you could do this. You could do this by going into the RGB mixer and boosting your saturation here. Or you could add saturation straight from here. For me, I just like to add it straight from here. I'm going to max this out at 100. And this is before and this is after. So if you look, before, after. So I may add some more saturation in the next one. We shall see. So for now, I'm going to add about another, I'm going to take it up to 54. Yeah, let's do 54. So 54, again, just this one's slight. You're not gonna see too much. And I like that right there. So the fourth one is where I'm gonna establish my look. Now my look is how I get a defined look and how I really emulate that film process. So I'm gonna jump into my gamma and I'm gonna pull it a little bit towards the orange and green, because Fuji loves to sit in that orange and green range. So this would be like an over dramatic look. If you could see what I'm doing there, this would be movie-like, film-like, very dark, very deep. That, to me, that kind of looks a little bit like the Joker status, but I'm gonna drag it back just because I want mine to be slight. I'm gonna drag it down to the greens because I don't really like all of the red. So if we go before and after, if you see now, so before, see all the blues and see everything. Now if we do it after, now it has more of a film look, it has more of a raw look and more of a film look to that. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in halation. Now this halation, the way that I'm going to do it can only be achieved by doing it by the paid version of DaVinci. If you don't have the paid version, there's other ways to do it, but for the sake of this video, I'm just going to do it the way that I've been doing it for a while with the paid version. So jumping into halation, right off the bat, you can already see that it's already starting to look a little more glowy. Now, I don't really focus too much on the white glow, but I focus more on the secondary glow. I like to just blast it so I can see what I'm doing. And then the biggest thing is going to be in the color. The biggest thing for film emulation is you want to replicate the film color, whether that be an orange or a deep red. For me, in this, I'm going to emulate kind of like a deeper red. So from there, I'm going to take my threshold and figure the threshold out with it being blasted. And I only want to attack the highlights because I only want it to bloom in the highlights. From there, I'm going to take my strength and bring it down just a tad. And then lastly, I'm going to work with my global blend. My global blend is just going to act as an overall blend that's going to help blend it in. So if you see the before and after, now it's just slightly adding to these highlights. You see, obviously the sun is blowing it out, but you see on top of this boat how it looks really good before, after. Before, after. This gives it the very vintage look that everyone tries to go for. I'm actually going to pull it down just a tad because I don't want it as noticeable. The next thing I'm going to do is focus on the 6th node, and from this I'm going to add a glow. The reason why I'm going to add a glow is to give it a little more dynamic range, and the reason why I'm saying that right now, you probably just saw that it just got blasted out in the highlights. However, I like to do a soft light. So I like to add soft light, and it's actually darkening the image, and I like to add a color filter that goes away from the halation, so this way the colors contrast each other and it looks very good. So from here, we're going to check this out. We're going to first do the opacity, figure out where the opacity sits. We're going to do the shine threshold and see how it looks. From there, we're going to go back. And I don't want it too much. I just want it slight. From there, I'm going to go to my global blend and blend it in very nicely. So if you see before, after, if we widen this out, before, after. You see how it's just very slight. Adding those slight details, especially in the shadows, is now the highlights are orange, the shadows are cool, and now it's giving us a really nice toned image. From there, the next thing that I want to add is on number 7, my 7th node. I normally add a Gaussian blur, and when I type this in, you could type in Gaussian blur. This is a free effect. With film emulation is you always want to de-sharpen your image, and Gaussian blur for me helps me de-sharpen the image. So I'm going to draw it back to about 1, in between 1 and 2. 2 being a little too much, 1.5 seems about right. It's going to be slight differences. It's going to be very hard to tell. I might even take it down just a tad, 1.2. From there, this image is looking really nice. I think this is very moody for the style that I would go for, especially in a film. And the last thing is going to be film grain. So I'm going to add my film grain, drag that on, and you can't fully see it yet, but I'm going to add it so that way you can see a little more. I like to use the 35mm 200 and 400T, depending on the style. So if I go full screen, you could definitely see the grain right there, and it looks beautiful. I love that. It looks amazing. You could, if you want, you could always do different grain sizes. You could turn the opacity up or down. You could even add saturation, which sometimes look really good. For the sake of this video, I'm not going to add any saturation, but I have added it before. Now, once you have all of this done, you want to try and emulate that onto your other clips. Now, the reason why you're going to add it onto the other clips is so that way you can color match and make sure that it's all balanced. So the one thing that I like to do that's pretty simple is I'll click on my next clip. You can see this is shot in Vlog as well, same camera, is I like to just right click on the last clip and hit apply grade. Now from there, this looks beautiful to me. I mean, there's some slight changes I need to make, but this looks very, very beautiful in my opinion. So from there, I think the only thing that I would change is I need to darken it a little bit, just a tad. just to make it sit a little nicer. And I think that is good. From there, everything else looks good. Saturation looks beautiful. And that's an awesome looking image. So now I'm gonna do the same thing. And okay, so this one is a little darker. So this one for sure needs to get boosted up. So I am going to drag the lift up a tad. The gain, drag the lift back down. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, let's see how that looks. Yep, and it is looking a little orange for me. So on one of them, I'm just going to slap the temperature back a tad. Now, if you can see what I did, actually that's a little too much. Let's go to -70. Yep, before, after. Awesome. So in the grand scheme of things, going back to the very beginning is I start with my color space transform. I transform my space from Panasonic Vlog to Rec 709, from Rec 709 to Cineon Film Log. From there, I jump to my LUT, and my LUT gives me the look that I want to go for, and then I jump back to the top. So once I go to the top, I start with my lift, my gamma, and my gain, and I figure out where my balance on my camera is. The second one is my saturation. The third is another extended saturation if I need extra saturation. My fourth is the look, the overall look of the video to get that very cinematic look to it. And the next thing is halation. Halation is what gives you that film emulation look. And then I counter that with some glow, going at a soft light and opacity very, very low just to offset it a tad. And then last, we jump over to our film grain to give it that finalized look. So if we play it from beginning to end, you can see that the first clip looks amazing, second clip looks amazing, and the third clip looks even better. So that's how I do my node tree. I hope you guys learned a little bit from it. The last thing I will say is that if you want to, you could label your nodes. I used to do this in the beginning, but I don't really do it now. If you want to label these, you could label them. You could right click and then node label. You could add it brightness. You could add saturation, and so on and so forth. So once you're all done, you want to go into your export settings. For myself, which I will export this clip in general in a second, you just want to name it. You want to select where you want to put it, and then as you get into the settings, you want to export your video. For me, I like to do H.265. For some reason, YouTube and Instagram have just been really liking QuickTime in H.265. 23.976, I always export as that. Quality is automatic. Encoding profile, main 10. And you kind of just want to leave these settings as is. For audio, if you have audio, just make sure you're exporting. You could do either one you want. I keep it at MP3. From there, your file, just name it again, and then you can send it out. You're going to add to render queue and then render all, and it's going to be good to go. So that's it for today's video, guys. Again, my name is Anthony. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. For more information on myself, you could subscribe to this channel or hit the bell icon to stay notified. You could also follow me on Instagram as well. I look forward to seeing you guys at the next video.